Hey guys, welcome back to another video. I don't know if you may remember this machine. This was a customer repair that I had to diagnose for him. It had no power under load. It ran fine without a load on it, but under load it would just die out, like no power. So I took the carb off and cleaned it, and it seemed to be okay in there. It wasn't really a big deal. Did a cylinder leak down test and found 90% or so compression leak, and it was coming out the exhaust valve. I could actually hear it coming out of the muffler when I had air applied into the cylinder. So we're going to tear this down. I'm not going to get too in-depth on every nut, bolt, and screw I got to take off to get the cylinder head off. I'm just going to kind of set the camera in the stand and just start pulling stuff off with the little cordless impact, and we'll get down to the cylinder head and get down underneath there, check that valve out, and yeah, we're gonna fix this too. I'm gonna put a new one on there. Anyways, let me get you set up. Let me get some tools organized and ready to go. Get the impact gun out and ready, and we'll give her. Intruder alert! Okay, let's try and get through this disassembly pretty quick. Quarter inch, 2 little screws or bolts hold this top on. That is the push button for the electric start, which the previous owner told me doesn't work. Should actually be careful doing this. These can easily strip and break. Supposed to be 2 bolts holding the starter on over here. One is missing. Okay, one, I took the wrong bolt out to start with. I took the bolt out for the front cover. So there's 2 bolts at the bottom, one was missing. There's another one up top. Above that, gotta get a deep socket. Okay, that's loose. The starter Bendix is engaged all the way out. Oh no, I'm sorry, this one pulls in. Appears like this one pulls in anyways, looks like it. Okay, get off to the side. I don't know if I'm going to install that again because it doesn't work. No sense putting something on there that doesn't work for resale. So there's 1 bolt down over here on the side of the cover. Another bolt here. Wrong angle. There is some fuel in here. The fuel valve is shut off. I'm going to take the fuel line off the bottom of the tank on the engine side of the valve so it doesn't pour all over the floor. That line is broken. It's cracked over there by the carburetor, so it's going to have to be replaced. I'm just going to cut it faster. Like I said, it's going to be replaced anyway. It's cut. Should just be able to pop out these 3 bolts. Should be 1/2 inch. The fuel tank should come off. These are head bolts actually. Too tight for that little gun. Just crack it loose with a ratchet. Got it in my hand, might as well crack them all. Head's coming off. Okay, they're all cracked loose anyway. Get the 3rd one out. Remove the fuel tank. Need a place to put my drill. Little shim goes underneath the tank here. It's a shield. Heat shield for the exhaust, or for the hot engine. Keep it away from the plastic fuel tank. Put this off to the side. looks all good. Need 3/8 on that side, a little ratchet. I tried doing everything from this side so you guys can see. I like that camera that I'm using right there. It's Canon. It's not HD, it's just standard def, but the only thing I have issue with on that is the angle of the lens. It's not very wide angle. Very narrow. I got to back it way up as far as I can in order to get you guys in on those shots. Okay, so underneath, why not pull this cover off underneath there? There's going to be that tube that goes to the carburetor for the primer. We'll just disconnect it now. A couple of more bolts, head bolts here. Holds the recoil on. I'm not sure if I got to take the recoil off or not. I don't think so. Should just wiggle out. There we go. Primer line is coming out with it. This recoil is no good anyways. The dogs are dragging. They're not retracting the way they should be. I have another recoil from the Tecumseh over here. I believe that that should just go right on there and replace it. That'll take care of our nylon cord problem and the started dogs not retracting problem. Coil wire. Gotta take 2 Phillips screws out here. That might be interesting. They're exhaust screws. And one up the top here, one bolt. Looks like a 7/16. Yeah, okay, the bolt's loose, that's nice. Get those screws out of there. Let's see which side I need to go on for the camera. There we go. Oh, that one. That came loose. Nice and easy, actually. Oh, that one was loose. And the threads are still threads. They're not just smooth holes. So that's not stripped out. That's a good sign. Little wee muffler comes off. The gasket is demolished in behind there. A piece of it just fell off. Looks like it was leaking at some point anyways, so. Yeah, it's just a gasket turned to dust. Okay, set that to the side. I'll pop that plug out of there just so it doesn't get damaged. I'm going to reuse it, so it is brand new. 13/16. We're down to 3 bolts. Hold that cylinder head on. Already cracked them loose. Well, except that one. And it's loose. There appear to be some different length bolts here. These two are shorter. This is a weird stud, so we know that one goes in the front. Long. These are all long ones. These 3 were the gas tank. These 2 are the recoil housing in the front. And these were, that's the exhaust one with a stud, and these are just short ones. Okay, we'll get a screwdriver and just see if we can gently pry that. It's coming right off, no problems. Was not able to save the gasket. That's going to need a new one. Okay, so here's our valves. Let me get you closer and show you what I'm seeing. Come on, behave yourself. Zoom in a little. A little more. There we go. This is our intake valve. That's our exhaust valve. Engine is at top dead center. Just gonna make sure. Roll that down. Let's have a look here. There's no ridge in there. No scoring. That looks okay. You see our exhaust valve is up. So the piston is now, got my finger sitting on top of the piston. The piston is coming up. That's coming up top dead center on the exhaust stroke. And just as it starts to go down below, your intake valve opens. So, piston's going down, coming back up. This is coming up on the compression stroke now. So I'm going to get that piston right at the very, very top of its travel. Right about there. And you shouldn't be able to turn these valves very easy. I can turn this one very easy. That's the intake. This one's extremely easy. There's no tension. So what I'm thinking, actually, the valve's not closing on the seat. So the tappets this is sitting on top of the tappet, which is sitting on top of the cam. There's no valve clearance. So we're gonna have to pull this plate off here. We'll have to pull the intake manifold off, pull the plate off. And I'm gonna pull the valve springs out, and we're gonna do basically do a valve job on there. We're gonna set the clearance on this. This is a kind of a neat opportunity for me. I don't get to do this very often on a flathead engine. There's a lot of things have gone by way of overhead cam engines, or sorry, overhead valve engines, not overhead cams, overhead valves. So all this adjustment is done under a cover. You just pull the cover off, so use a feeler blade to set your gauges, you set your valve flash, and that's it. So yeah, that's where we're at. We're gonna pop the springs out. We're gonna pop the valves out. I'm gonna check the seats, make sure they're not broken, cracked, or anything like that. We'll do a visual inspection first, and then we'll get down a little further and get this figured out. I can feel the valve is sitting right on top of the tappet. There's no clearance on that valve, and likely a very similar story here. Either no clearance or not enough. All right, I'm going to basically just take these two bolts out. Our fuel hose just runs in behind through here. I'm going to just slide the entire hose out that way, and then I'm going to replace it when it goes back together. So now that I moved you closer to look at the valves, you're in my way. I'll get you set up so I can work and you can watch. Okay, so I got the one valve spring out. I'll show you how it works with this tool, valve spring compressor. I'll pull the exhaust valve out. Just set that off. Well, you know what? I'll just pop it back in there. Let it sit for a minute. So here's the valve spring. That's the valve spring. This tool, you use the screw to put these jaws together, squishes the spring, and then you can tip it out sideways, and you unhook the little notch off the stem of the valve. So the valve, see the stem is notched there? Come on, focus. So it goes through the hole off to the side, and then hooked in here. That's the position when it's running. That's the position to remove it. Focus. There we are. Yeah, that seat's kind of tired. We'll get her cleaned up though. Put that on the bench. I'll get rid of this spring out of there. And while the camera's going, I'll get the other one out of there and show you how it's done. We're going to pull our intake valve off now. This is going to be down tight enough to get underneath the valve. You want this to be up as high as you can on the block. Give it a little push. And then as I'm doing this, the bottom jaw is coming up. It's coming up crooked. There we go. Oh, come on now. The other one didn't give me this much of a fight. Squishing the valve spring. not behaving. There's not much travel in there. I can't really get that spring very compressed. It's got to be right at the ideal spot. There we go. Get that valve wiggled out. The little notch where I showed you the valve passes through. Can't tell where it is. There it is. Got it. Okay. Pull that valve out. I should have actually been wearing safety glasses. The spring comes shooting out of this little tool. It can give you a bad day. So the intake valve is generally shorter than the exhaust. These ones are, the intake is a tiny bit shorter than the exhaust on this one. But I want to keep the valves together with their springs, the respective springs. Get you out of the stand there, get you a little close-up look at that valve seat so you can inspect it at the same time I do. I like my quick release for the camera, that's for sure. Beats unscrewing a tripod all the time. Alright, let me get the focus in there. The seat doesn't look too bad. I don't see any cracks in it. The intake seat. So the shiniest surface there that you can see in the camera, that's the actual seat. That's where the valve seals against. So it's doesn't look burned out. Get a close-up look at those valves. It's exhaust valve. I'm gonna clean that up and lap it in. We'll get to that later on in the video. Doesn't look too crazy bad. We're gonna lap that in. That's the intake. That's the intake spring. That's the exhaust spring. So, like I was saying, to adjust the lash, this is the tappet that rides up and down on the camshaft, and you need to have clearance there between the valve stem and the tappet. Has to have clearance. This has no clearance. It's sitting right on top of that tappet. A 1 valve feeler blade won't even fit in there. Nothing. It's sitting right on top of that. So in order to get our clearance, it'll be down in measured in thousandths of an inch. But in order to get that clearance, that little bit of space there, on an assembled valve, we have to grind. We have to grind this part just a little bit shorter. Basically make the valve shorter. And it'll be a trial and error. You grind it, you fit it, put the spring back in, check it with a feeler blade. If it's not enough, you have to take it apart again, grind it, put it all back together with a spring, and it's you take a little tiny bit off at a time. You can always take more off, but it's real hard to put it back on. I'd rather not have to put it back on, and I don't want to replace a valve. It looks like these are factory ground. Doesn't look like any monkey's been at it with a bench grinder. So let me get some stuff cleaned up. I gotta make some room on the bench. I gotta get my lapping tool in the compound ready, and we'll carry on with it. Alright guys, so we're gonna carry on here with a valve job on this 5-horse Tecumseh. I'm gonna lap this valve in. I have to grind some of the valve off first. In order to lap the seat in and the sealing surfaces, they actually have to be touching, but this valve is just spinning on the tappet, so it's not actually touching the seat in there. So I can put all the valve lapping compound I want in there, but it ain't gonna work. So what I have to do is grind some of the base of the stem off in order to get some clearance. I'm not gonna do a final size because it'll change as I lap the valve. So I'm gonna get just enough ground off of there so I can get some clearance to lap the valve. And once the valve is lapped, then I can do my final adjustment and get my 4th thou clearance, which is the spec on this. 4th thou clearance in the tappets. This little piece of tape here is plugging an oil return hole. when I was doing my cleaning, I got the gasket surface clean, and when I'm doing my lapping and everything, I don't want anything to go down in the motor, so I just plugged that up. I won't be able to get footage of the actual grinding because I can't get a tripod and me and everything in here, so just wanted to show you a little basic setup. It's important to grind this flat, so I've squared off and clamped on a little piece of angle here. I'm just going to lay the valve stem in there, just like so. And then I'll be able to hold slight pressure down this way as I'm turning the valve with my other hand, and just touch it on the wheel as it's spinning to get the nice and straight. You get a small amount taken off of there. So I'm going to get the grinding. I got to put you guys down for a bit, and then we'll come back when I got some clearance on there. So I've got enough clearance on the bottom of that valve now. You can see that, get some focus there. Come on, focus. Got a nice circular pattern on the valve anyways. There it is. Might be able to continue to focus. So I just turned it slowly as I touched the grinder wheel. And got that enough clearance that I can get it lapped in anyways. So I've spread some valve lapping compound on the surface there. Just gently insert it down there. Give it a little spin. You don't need a lot of pressure. Just need to roll it back and forth. You lift it, turn it just a little, and it'll pull some of that compound back onto the surface because it tends to spread it out of the way. And you want to keep doing this until you get a nice gray band all the way around the valve. This one's a little pitted, so it's going to take a little bit longer. I'm going to do the intake valve as well. It's not very bad, but I'm in here. Might as well do it. Let's have a look. Now we're starting to get a gray band around there now. Try and get a camera on it. Starting to get a gray band around that valve, the valve there. There's a couple of high spots, so I'm going to continue with this. This is going to take some time. It's gray here. I'm not sure if the camera's actually seeing it, but it's gray here and here. There's a dark spot, so I'm going to continue doing that, and it's going to make a much better mating surface, a much better sealing surface. I'll carry on, and then I'll turn the camera back on when I'm just finishing in the intake valve. Alright, so I've got the valves lapped in. The intake valve is lapped. I'm just going to gap it in a second here. This is the exhaust valve that was all pitted. It's now got a nice gray line all the way around it. It's not ideal contact area, but it's going to be fine for this old blower. Where I had no clearance before, I wanted to get as close as I could to 4,000, but it's actually about 5,500, which is it's fine because it's well within spec. Spec is 4,000 to 8,000 for a minimum and maximum, and that's the same for the intake, both intake and exhaust valves. There's the intake valve. See, there's a nice gray line completely around the valve. And that's now mated to the seat, so both these valves are going to seal perfectly for now. Let's I've already measured and checked the exhaust valve. Let's pop over to the blower and we'll check our clearance on the intake valve. I've ordered parts for this, but it's going to be a little bit before I can get it. I held my finger over my little masking tape plug. I used a blowgun. I cleaned out all the debris from inside the ports, in the guides, the valve guides where the stem rides in and out of. And you want to make sure that you remove all that valve lapping compound out of there. It's extremely abrasive. So, let's see if I can do this with one hand. There's a 5 thou feeler gauge there. Yeah, ideally you'd want to have all the springs and everything in there. But what I'm going to do is I'll set you in a stand, and I'm just going to use my thumb and push down some pressure on that valve to make sure it's sitting on the seat, and then we can check our clearance. Hang on. Okay, so our spec is 4 to 8. So I've got a 4 thou feeler blade, I've got an 8 thou feeler blade. As long as it's looser than this and tighter than this, we're okay. it'll be fine. So we'll check our fourth thou. That's very loose. So we know it's at least 4 thou. So we know it's not too tight. This is our 8th thou. I'm pushing on the valve, and that is very, very, I can't move it. So we're in between 4 and 8. Basically, I could stop right there and say good enough, but I'm curious. Let's see what we got. Let's get a 5 thou out. Stick a 5 thou in there. Push down on the valve. A little loose. 6. Little loose. 7. It's a little snug with me putting a lot of pressure on that valve, so we're at 6.5 thou. There's the slightest amount of drag on a 6 thou. So we're at 6.5 thou. Well within spec. We should be fine. Now I'm going to reassemble the springs, and then we wait for parts. I ordered a set of gaskets here. The exhaust gasket turned to dust when I took it off. Intake gasket is still here. That's still good. Head gasket's on the way. So let's get those valves in there. Let's get the springs in there and carry on. So that's the intake valve. Let me grab the valve spring compressor. Get my spring and my keeper lined up. Just going to do this off camera. It's not that fascinating. The tool works pretty slick though. It's I can see it being a very difficult job if you don't have this tool. I'm not saying it can't be done, but the tool makes it far easier. So, I've got the spring set in there. I've got it so if I tilt the tool upwards like this, the valve should fall into the groove in that little spot there, the elongated notch. And then I should be able to lower the tool and pull the spring out. So I'm going to snug that up. Get it as tight as I can. It's not huge pressure in there, but I get it as tight as I can. Gives me the most clearance. Lift our valve, tilt it, and there we go. Make sure it's nice. Make sure the keeper is sitting nice and flat and flush. It is. There's no way I could turn that valve with my thumb pressure, so that's in good shape. There's the exhaust valve. We'll get that set in there. And we'll do it the same way. So we'll loosen off the tool. I'm going to try it the same way, same orientation with the keeper slot in the same direction. It's nice to know ahead of time where that is, because when I was taking it apart I had no idea where the slot was, so it made it a little more challenging to get it apart. So one thing I should mention, anytime you're compressing springs, even though there's not a crazy amount of tension in here, there's enough to injure you if that spring comes flying out of the tool and hits you in the eye bulb. Bit of an angle. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm lifting the valve. I'll lift the valve out to get me clearance to go in. Tilt this up. The valve fits into that slot. Tilt the tool like this, and I'll push it down. So now I know that the retainer at the bottom of the spring is now holding onto the valve stem, and give it a pull. Oh, see, that one didn't work. Let's get those pieces out of there. Needle nose pliers. The tool makes it easier, not perfect every time. Try not to mangle things on the way out. Alright, let's do that again. What I'll do this time is, instead of just popping it out like that, which is the normal way to use this tool, instead of just popping it out, what I'll do is I'll release the tension. Because right now I'm using this thumb screw to put tension on the spring. I think this time what I'll do is I'll get it seated on the retainer, and then I'll just loosen the tension off. Give us a tilt, get into the slot. Should be sitting on the retainer. Loosen that off. There, look at that. Nice. Let's make sure that this is flat. Looks pretty good to me. Not a chance of me turning that exhaust valve. So we're golden. That's good. So basically that's a valve job on a flathead or an L-head engine. That's what you do. So there's no debris in there. So I'll take my plug out. Don't forget to take your plug out. Otherwise this will fill right up. This is actually a breather that goes in here. It'll fill up with oil and you'll be having a bad day. Alright guys, so I guess what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw a garbage bag over this and throw it outside. Because it'll be a few days before I get parts, and I'm not going to tie up the shop just for waiting for a head gasket. Okay, so I will continue on, carry on where we left off when the parts come in. Alright, before I throw a garbage bag over this thing, push it outside and wait for parts, I just wanted to go through a quick run through here of what I'm going to do to this, or what I have done to this to get it ready for resale. I want to make sure everything is in tip-top shape, that there's no problems down the road. So I want to make sure that all the maintenance is done on it, make sure everything is lubricated and good to go. So first things first, pull the belly pan off, you check your drive wheel and the drive disc condition. There's no big grooves in it, which is excellent. I've already wiped it down with a rag and brake clean. You want to make sure that there's no oil or grease on that. I held a brake clean soaked rag against the wheel, clean that off. There's no chunks, no rips, no cracks or tears or anything in that rubber drive wheel. That'll give you drive issues down the road. This bar here that is attached to the friction wheel, this unit slides back and forth in here, and that gives your gears depending on how far away from the center it is of this drive disc. So this is your high gears, so the closer to the middle it is, that'd be like first gear, second, third, fourth, fifth, whatever, however many gears your unit has. So you go to the reverse, what it does is it goes to the opposite side of the center. Some will have a single gear for reverse, some have two. It all depends on how far away from that center it goes. So this is your forward speeds, these are your reverse speeds. This shaft here, usually what happens is they get rusty. Usually these blowers sit outside. This one wasn't rusty, but it did have old, very dried up, stiff grease on it. So what I do is I clean it down with some, actually I use WD-40 because it works really good as a solvent for this type of situation. So I cleaned it down, and then I moved the gear selector over so the friction wheel went to the other side, and I cleaned the other side, and I use a white lithium grease on this. It's a very thin grease. The advantage with lithium is that it doesn't get stiffened up and hardened up in the cold, so that's ideal for a snowblower application. The other thing I did was I took emery and I cleaned these shafts because the wheels were extremely hard to get off. There was a lot of rust built up here. I removed the bushing that goes into the housing here. That's where the axle sits. I removed the bushing and I put some grease in it, lithium grease, put it back in. Then I used anti-seize or never seize, like the gray stuff. It's like the herpes of mechanic world, because that stuff is, once you touch it, you got it forever. It's everywhere. It ends up on your pants and in your hair and in your fingers and all over the place. Pretty soon wife's yelling at you that you got anti-seize on the couch. And you don't even know, because you've changed your clothes and washed your hands. You never know. So I did that to both sides, cleaned up both shafts. Everything's working nice in there. You want to avoid big globs of grease anywhere inside here. A little bit of grease here and there is okay, but big globs tend to fly off and hit that wheel, and then you have drive issues. So that's what I've done in here to get it ready. Everything is in really nice shape. This machine doesn't have a lot of hours on it. It doesn't have a lot of use. I did go around with a little spray lube, and I lubed every little moving part in here, all up in here, and on the levers. My next step is going to be, I'm going to set the gap on that coil. Not that it doesn't work now, but I'm in here. It's 2 screws. I'll set the gap, make sure it's perfect, because it looks very, very close. If you start to get any rust buildup on your magnet surface, it's going to start whacking into that coil. So I'm just going to set that up. And then I'll get set up on a stand, and we're going to tear into this recoil. I was just going to bolt another one on. I have another good used one. I was just going to bolt it on and go with it, but I think we'll repair this. I want to show you exactly what's going on with these. If you notice, the starter dogs, they're kind of loose. They flop around on their own. They shouldn't. They should be retracted right now. So what's been happening is As you give it a pull and it starts, the dog will hang out just like this. A little starter cog there. And it rattles around and scrapes and makes a hell of a racket. So I'm going to get set up in the stand here on the bench, and I'm going to pop this apart and I'll show you what's going on in there and see if we can fix it real easy. If we can't fix it easy, then I'll go ahead and put the other one on, but I'll try and fix this one first. Maybe an interesting video. Hang tight, we'll get you reset and get into this recoil. Okay, so here's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with a recoil that customer has repaired with a piece of pipe and a, I don't know, little tiny nylon string. We're going to replace that, the rope itself, but the starter is making a hell of a racket when it's running. So when you pull this out, the dogs come out to engage the starter cup on the engine, and when it retracts, it's supposed to pull those dogs back in. They're staying out. They're supposed to be spring loaded to return. So I know the customers had this apart, because usually there's a sticker over here, a Tecumseh or whatever. Sometimes it's a horsepower sticker, but in any case, this one was missing. So let's get inside that, and I'll show you what's going on. We'll see if we can fix it. It could just be assembled incorrectly. There's a little wedge in there. You pull the wedge out, and now these two tabs, I'll be able to squish them in and pull the inside out. There's no, the recoil spring is underneath this plate, so there's no worry about getting that to pop off, but just be careful. That comes off. Now this point, this can actually come out, and you'll lose your recoil spring. It'll fly everywhere, so just be aware you don't want to move it around too much. These dogs are supposed to be spring loaded to that position. It looks like the springs are missing. Nope, actually the springs are there. Spring is right there, and the leg is on it. So well, there you go. They were just assembled incorrectly. This one there, yep, that spring's there too. Let's grab the little leg of the spring, put it in behind the dog. Easy fix. Easy fix. These two little bumps here go in behind they go inside here. When you pull it one way, the friction will open the dogs, and then when it returns, it closes the dogs on spring pressure. There we go. So I'm not going to put that in. Let's see how that works. Dogs come out, and they retract by themselves. Okay, that's done. That was easy. Put our little lock back in there. Now everything's golden. Alright, let's get the pokey cord off of here. Let's get rid of that. I'll show you what I've done here. I just used a drill bit, and I put a little notch right here in the outside. That's going to allow me to wrap my rope appropriately. So we're going to relieve all the tension on the spring. Actually, let's pull that rope out of there. Okay, we've got about 8 yards of rope there. That's way too much rope. Let's get this garbage out of here. I have a good quality used rope already. It's about the right size. The brand new stuff that I have in stock is, I got some small stuff for like weed whackers and chainsaws. I've got some heavy stuff for like big snow blowers and like 8-10 horsepower stuff. So this is somewhere in between that. I just don't have any new stuff in stock on a roll. Let's see if I can get that to start into this little spot. So I cut this with a sharp knife, and then I used just a lighter to warm up the end so it doesn't want to fray on me. So we'll get that fed out to a position where I can grab it from the other side. Okay, that's through. There is still tension on this spring, so I'm going to see how much cord I can get in there. Huh. Let's see how long I got. I want to set enough cord in there that when the future owner grabs a hold of that thing and gives it a pull, it doesn't go right to the stop, right to the end of the rope. I want to have just a little bit of comfort room there, so you know what, I might leave that entire length of cord on there. I will. So at this point the spring is completely relaxed and I still have cord sticking out. That's easy to fix. That's easy to fix. Let me get the handle put on there. I'll show you how to do that. So on the handle end, we're just going to pull it through, tie a knot on it. Nice and tight. Pull it back into the handle, so that's good. Alright, so our handle's floppy. It's I don't want that hanging out. So what we're going to do is we're going to pull some out. Just grab a hold of this in here. So pull it right to there. Grab some of this from inside. Here we go. And we're going to wrap that spring tighter. So I got a loop here. We're going to go see how the cord is now stuck in the notch that I made. It'll allow me to go around the inside of this recoil. So now I can get another wrap on the spring, pull the slack back out. Here we go. That's got too much cord in it. No, that should be okay now. Nope. The cord is too big. To get the amount and the length of cord I want in there, it's actually too big. I'll have to put small cord on it. Oh well, it was worth a try. You can see get you in there. The cord is completely filled up the pulley to the point where now the cord is rubbing on the outside of the recoil, so it's too thick. I'll put a thinner rope in there. Yeah, it's just starting to bind up. Does it once in a while. Okay, I'll take it apart again. I'll just take that cable out. I'll reuse it again. It's still a used cable that's in good shape, or rope. Still in good shape, so I'll take it out. I'll put smaller cord in there. Alright, yeah, let's get some smaller cord in there. So I cut it flush, heated it with a lighter, made it nice and small, so we'll go through, I fed it through here first, and then into the pulley. Just get a knot on there. The smaller cord, I should be able to get enough in there now to give me the length I need and not bind up inside on itself. There's several different sizes of cord. Okay, so I'm at the end of the rope. I'm going to pull, I left it on the spool, so I'm going to pull out what I think is going to be enough, and then we can get it cut and wrapped in there. Like I said, you want to be able to get a good long pull on the cord without bottoming it out on the rope. We're going to try there. We'll cut it off flush. Nice sharp knife. So what I'm going to do now is I'll just pull it out of here. Because there's no handle on it, it's easy enough to do. We'll get it lined up with that notch that I made in the housing. And we'll just start winding it up. That'll give us our tension on the spring. One more. No, that's probably too much. Let's try that. Now I can stick the rope through this end. even if the handle's on, it's not hard to get a little bit more or a little bit less tension on the recoil spring itself. So that's through. Yep, that's enough tension. It'll pull it all the way in. I almost lost it. There we go. It goes all the way in, all the way out. It's the right length. It'll be just fine. Nice, nice. Okay, so I'm just going to put a loose knot in this here. Nice big knot. It doesn't have to be tight. I just want it to hold it from pulling itself back into the recoil. Nice big chunky knot like that. Now we can work on this end and get it through the handle. So it frayed a little bit while I was working with it. Cut it off nice and flush again. A sharp knife. Get our lighter, warm that up. Doesn't have to be on fire, just got to be soft enough that you can shape it. There we go, nice and small. That'll go up through here, put a little bend on it. It's got to steer around the hole up here. Through the handle. Another knot on this end. Nice and tight. Pull it back into the handle. Good to go. Let's get this knot untied. There we go. Completed repair. Nice. All goes in, all comes out. It's got plenty of length. That'll go back on now. That's fixed. Next step from here is going to be set that coil gap. It literally takes less than a minute. So I'm going to get that done and then put a garbage bag on this thing, push it outside, wait for parts. Alright guys, we're going to finish this one off. Unfortunately, and I apologize, that I had so many projects going on at the same time that everything's a mess. There are bits and pieces and parts for all different machines in here. I had a few other things going on that repairs on my own stuff. Everything is a mess. So I had a hard time finding nuts and bolts and everything, and I didn't want to fight with that on camera. So I'll just give you a quick rundown here. What ended up happening was new head gasket. After I got the valves and everything were ready, it was just waiting for a head gasket. So put the head bolts in, torque those to 200 inch-pounds in 50-pound increments, 50 inch-pound increments, and it's like a star pattern, I guess. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and I went 50, and then up to 100, 150, 200, and I kept going in the pattern at 200 until the bolt stopped turning, and that was set. Also had to replace the 1/4-inch fuel line that ran from the tank through the recoil and up to the carburetor. I got that figured out. New gasket. The carburetor ran mint because I've already taken it apart and cleaned it. It's got fresh oil in it. The belts are good. Everything else has been gone through. It's ready for sale. It runs great. I fixed the electric starter too. I'm not sure if I actually have footage of that, but I took the starter apart. The drive was seized, so it got a bunch of penetrating oil in there and cleaned that. Previous owner said electric start didn't work, so as you can see, the fuel valve is off. I did have it running, and as it was running, and after I'd done all my checks and adjustments, I did also use an electronic tachometer, and I set the maximum RPM to about 3550. Tecumsehs are known that if you over rev them, they aerate their crankcase. The rod breaks and comes flying outside of the engine. So 3600 is optimum. You don't want to rev them more than that. I usually set them about 3550. On a snowblower, if it's not running fast enough, it doesn't blow snow. It doesn't actually shoot out of the chute. So 3550 is about right. My own, I run 3550, and anytime I have anything in here, I always make sure that the maximum RPM is set properly. But anyways, what I did was I shut the fuel off, and I let the unit run out of fuel. Carburetor's empty, so now it can go outside and be stored for a short amount of time until it's sold. And that is going to wrap this one up. Thanks for joining me, guys. Please don't forget to hit the like button. Gives me more incentive, makes me happy when I get likes on my videos. Please click subscribe, and don't forget to click the bell icon to get notified when I upload new videos. I usually do one a week. Until the next one, guys, take care, and we'll see you later.